This happened around 10 to 12 years ago, and I almost completely forgot about it until now. It's a pretty short story, but at the time it absolutely terrified me. When I was younger, my whole block was filled with kids from my age, at the time around 9 or 11, I can't exactly remember when, and we would all play around the neighborhood, near a cemetery that's right near my house. We all used to play until after dark, playing games like Ghost in the Graveyard and Tag and all that fun stuff, so it wasn't that uncommon for us to be unattended around the block. It's a relatively safe neighborhood, and I still live in the same house, so I'm surprised this even happened. This particular day, my best friend and I decided to go look at the gravestones in the cemetery. We went in there and started browsing, amazed by all the dates. We were so preoccupied, we didn't see a man who was walking aimlessly alone in the cemetery, not looking at any graves in particular, just walking. I saw him and told my friend that we should head back home, because he was a bit creepy and we were just scrawny little girls. We head back home, and just as we're about to exit the cemetery, this older woman stops us and says, "You girls shouldn't come in here. There are creeps that walk through here," and give a knowing and creepy smile. We just told her we were sorry and just playing, and went on our way. When we got back to our houses, we continued playing in the front yard, doing what little girls do, and suddenly I look up and see the same man from the cemetery. I was a little creeped out, but didn't know at the time that this was something to watch out for. He started coming towards us, trying to talk to us, and we just kept playing and running around like we didn't see him, and eventually, we went back to my backyard and felt a little safer. An hour or so later, we think it's safe to venture back out to the front yard, but we see him, just sitting on the curb. I can see now that he wasn't dressed nicely and hadn't taken a bath in a while, and despite it being summer, he had a hat on, kind of like a beanie. We get really creeped out at this point and go tell our moms. My dad comes out and shoos him away, and we think that's that. Another hour goes by, and we see the same man standing by our neighbor's backyard, which is visible from the street, trying to pet their dogs. We run in and tell our dad again, and he orders us to stay inside. We watch, interested from the window, and I wish we hadn't. My best friend's dad runs across the street just in time to see the man standing near the same yard, with a bite from the dog on one hand, and the dog itself, dead. He ran down the alley just before my friend's dad could reach him. Our parents called the cops, but I don't think he was ever found. I've been a lurker on these kinds of subreddits for quite a while now. I think it's time for me to post a creepy story about an incident that happened about 2 years ago, and this seems like a good place to post. First of all, let me talk about the cemetery and the area around it. The cemetery is visually stunning. It has a completely open area where you can see all the graves around and into the distance. A spooky maze-like section with nature overwhelming the gravestones with overgrown plants everywhere, and a large church located at the far end. It's eerie, but also very beautiful at the same time. But before this incident, I never really cared about this graveyard all that much. I walked past it when having to go meet my friends, or when I just took a shortcut to get home, and recently, to get to college. The cemetery was next to some very spooky alleyways and a council estate, so you had to watch your back when you walked through this place, due to the constant rumors of drug dealers, muggers, and all sorts roaming the area at night. Nevertheless, the cemetery didn't seem too interesting to me, until my friend told me a bizarre story involving his brothers and their friends. At nighttime, the brothers and their friends used to play a game inside the cemetery at night. I don't recall my friend telling me exactly what kind of game it was, but that's not important. They were just typical teenagers, causing mischief to make the day worth it since the district had the excitement of watching grass grow. After about 20 minutes of doing their little game, they began to notice something was off. The guys felt like they were being watched. The atmosphere turned dark and bleak. Tension was among themselves, because they knew they weren't alone. Soon enough, one of the guys saw it. A person. This person was wearing a cloak, and he was holding something. This person was crouching under gravestones, and was silently trying to move from one to the other, slowly getting closer. Well, one of them noticed it, and informed the others of the situation. They turned, all of them. Before the others could spit out a word, the cloaked man began chasing them, holding a hammer like a weapon. This guy was insanely fast, but due to the adrenaline rush and sport background of his opposing forces, the teens were faster. I don't want to make their story any longer, so I'll finish by saying that the friends jumped over a large fence and escaped the cloaked man. The second they jumped over, a large thud was heard, and the fence was pushed forward. The cloaked man had hit the fence with his large hammer and was close to cracking open a skull. Afterwards, they got home, and two of them told their brother, my friend. At first, I didn't believe the story, and neither did my other friends. The friend, named Sam, who told me and the others of this story didn't exactly lie a lot, and he seemed pretty serious. I was thinking that his brothers were lying to him, but I thought, hey, fuck it, I'll go see if this cloaked man is there, and you guys are coming with me. A day after presenting my friends with a little adventure idea, I began planning where we should meet, and how we were going to do this quest. Suddenly, my friend David texts me. He already went looking for the cloaked man the night before with his friends. His encounter with this cloaked man was a little less frantic than the other confrontation, but this time, a lot more outlandish. David went with two other people. When they went deep into the cemetery, one of the guys immediately shouted, "Hey, no face!" Dave tried to tell him to shut up, but he wouldn't stop. The group carried on through the pathway, surrounded by dead people, until they reached a large shed. David and the others hid behind a bush and saw him. The cloaked man was inside, examining his weapons. Apparently a large hammer, a rusty-looking wrench, and a decaying machete. Eventually, he stopped and went out of his shed and into the church. Unexpectedly, the church bell is heard, loudly. The guys watching don't know what the hell is going on, but the bell is ringing for a good minute. The bell is, strangely enough, ringing in a weird pattern. Dave tells the others to get up and go back to another spot. They hide behind a bench this time, being further away from the strange church. Then the cloaked man comes out, looking concerned and ready to attack. Panic rushes through everyone behind the bench, making everyone involved quickly agree to get the hell out. They try to sneak out, but David keeps his eyes on the cloaked man. What the cloaked man does will give my friend various amounts of what the fuck thoughts forever. The cloaked man stops dead in his tracks, and then falls to the ground. He's crawling around the gravestones rapidly, going from one to another. However, he's not just doing that. He's making noises. The sound of the cloaked man spewing out growling-like noises begins to conquer the frigid, emotionless graveyard. Then, abruptly, he gets up and smashes one of the gravestones with his axe for no reason, and lets out a haunting scream up to the skies. Dave says fuck hiding, and they all run out. The man doesn't chase them, but looks into the distance. When he finished his story of discovering more about the cloaked man, I thought there would be no point in going there now. We all know that this cloaked man is a fucking weirdo that preys on teens and poor, short-lived gravestones. What else can you find out? Well, I'm big on adventure, so I thought that me, David, Sam, and many others should go and explore a little more, just to see what else the guy would do. So a few days later, we have our team. Me, Sam, David, Charlie, and Mike. Charlie was a fat slob, and Mike was the witty man of the group. So we all met up at a local tube station at daytime. Yeah, we were going at nighttime at first, but everyone wussed out, so we went during the middle of the day. We slowly walked through the empty alleyways and the council houses until we got to the gates, which were locked. We jumped over and began our adventure. Sadly, Charlie and Mike just weren't having it and climbed back out. They weren't going anywhere though. They were going to be waiting for us. After 20 minutes went by, nothing was happening. Instead of going straight to the shed, we decided to take another route. All of us went through the claustrophobic maze-like section when the gravestones were just covered with plant vines. We began walking around and arguing amongst one another. Sam was bored and wanted out. Dave didn't care that much, and I wanted to go back out into the open and find the shed and church. 5 minutes of arguing later, and we suddenly hear footsteps. We looked around, but there was nothing. "Get out your phone," Sam says to me. "Alright, wait a second," I reply. So my phone is out, I unlock it, and I go to the camera. I'm pointing at the remoteness with my phone, but nothing is lurking in the distance. At least, not in our vision. We knew someone was near us, so we began frantically walking through this maze. Sam wants me to begin recording, so I do just that. Since nothing was happening again, the recording just becomes a dragged-out video of us walking around like idiots. I switch the phone off and we go deeper into the cemetery. It gets darker and darker and tighter, and then I see it. The cloaked man is following us. I finally saw the fucker. It was when I looked behind, and he was hiding behind a huge angel statue. "Guys, I see him behind us. Let's get the fuck out of here," I'm shouting. "You sure?" says David. David, being the confident and curious guy of the group, walks back and tries to catch the guy. I didn't want to see this crazy guy pop out, but I wasn't leaving my friend, so we all went back behind the statue. And he was gone. Sam got overly paranoid and wanted us to get out. He had that crawling feeling that someone was staring at us. That we continued on, being idiots, and that's when I spot him again on the other side. He was a little bit further away from us this time, so I wasn't as scared, but I could see him trying to get closer, blending in horribly with the trees. I started freaking out. Dave and Sam noticed something moving, so we ran about 30 feet away and tried to hide. The cloaked man was now going in the other direction and entered the church. Then we heard those bells. Dave confirmed that those bells were the same ones he'd heard the other night. The cloaked man came back out, and without any hesitation, he charged at our direction. Let me just clarify the locations by saying that we were still in the maze-like area of the cemetery, but we could still see the open area in the distance, where the gravestones and church were located. So he was far away but charging at our position. He knew where we were. Even though we were hiding and nowhere near him, he still knew our location. He didn't change directions or anything. He sprinted in one line, with an axe in both hands. When I realized he was getting closer and closer, I yelled, "Run," and we legged it. We ran and I looked behind. He was right there, ready to swing at us. We didn't want to split up, so we ran around the maze until we found a pathway with large hedges on the side. No going back. We all ran and ran through the path, but after running down this path, I was beginning to have a heart attack. When I looked in front, I felt so much fear. I was already losing help. and it was a dead end. Me and my friends were greeted by a locked shed at the end of the path. No way to get in. No way to climb on top of the shed. We had a feeling of dread taking over our bodies, and we waited a few minutes, but the cloaked man didn't come. We silently went the other direction and stumbled back to the overgrown plant gravestone maze. We looked everywhere, finding nothing but broken tombstones and ripped up branches. There was silence for about 10 minutes, when we looked in every direction again, hoping the man was gone. All of us were sneaking around, until we got out of the maze and the claustrophobic feeling of that horrible area disappeared. Mundane gray clouds that suddenly appeared, and made the open cemetery look more disturbing and bleak than it already was. As we walk on, we hear a thunderstorm starting, and it sounds like it's going to rain. We try to jog out of there, when we look up and see something sticking out. Holy shit! The man is in the distance, with his hood off, standing on top of a gravestone. His face was visible, but not exactly. He was wearing a cliché Halloween mask for some reason. We stare at him for about 20 seconds, before it goes down and begins crawling in our direction. Fuck that. We ran and ran, until we jumped over the fence. Charlie and Mike weren't there, because they got bored and left, but I guess I can't blame them. After that experience, we were all freaked out, and decided never to go to the cemetery ever again. I did go there again though years later to film some stuff for some college assignments. We went home, and that was it. The next day though, I walked through a street with the cemetery on the left side, and saw red tape and police inside the graveyard next to the church. I wish I had asked the police officer what was going on, but I was too freaked out to go back there, even with police everywhere. I never did find out what happened there, and now that I think about it, I don't think I want to know. But there were rumors that the guy that was stalking and chasing us was just the caretaker wearing a mask, trying to scare people who went to the cemetery just to mess around. So, the police investigation probably had nothing to do with the Cloaked Man. At least, I hope not. This incident happened to a relative of mine, and his younger cousin, and some others. I'll call this relative Dave. He and his wife were in their 20s at the time, and had not been married very long. This incident happened in the 1990s. Dave had a younger cousin who was being raised by her grandparents. The grandparents lived out in the country, and there wasn't a lot of kids her age to hang out with. So Dave and his wife would often invite her along if they were driving into the nearest city to see a movie or play mini-golf or something like that. It was the cousin's 13th birthday, and she wanted to have a sleepover, so it was decided it would be at Dave's house. She invited 5 of her closest friends. Dave and his wife were not all that mature, and when around the kids, they would act like kids right along with them. Anyway, they decided later that night to go to a graveyard. I guess just for a thrill or something. There's not much in our tiny town to do otherwise. In our small town, the graveyards around this area are located out in the woods. This particular one was surrounded by thick woods with no houses nearby. It was small and had a chain link fence around it and a street light near the gate where you enter. Well, Dave and his wife and the 6 girls all exited the car and walked around the graveyard. They were laughing, joking, chasing each other, telling ghost stories, trying to scare each other, and just generally being pretty silly. They finally got tired of playing around and decided to go back to Dave's house. They all went and got back into Dave's large 70s model car. The girls piled into the back, and of course, he and his wife got into the front. All of the females were talking and giggling, being silly, while Dave, sitting in the driver's seat, was getting ready to crank up the car. While this was going on, they heard a tap on the driver's side window. It wasn't a tap like someone using their knuckles. It was like the ting of someone using a light metal object. Everyone looked towards the window, and there was a guy standing there, holding a machete. And the tip of the machete was what he was using to tap on the window with. Dave and his wife said that this guy was dressed like Rambo. He wasn't wearing a shirt, had some kind of rag tied around his head, and was painted up with the green and brown paint, kind of like the camo army guys paint themselves up with when they go on maneuvers. Dave assumed it was possibly someone needing help, so he began opening his door to get out and talk to the guy. When he did this, he said his wife and all the girls started screaming and diving for the door. The girls were diving over the seat, and his wife across the seat. They pulled the door shut and locked it, and frantically began locking all the doors. Then, the girls and Dave's wife all started screaming at Dave, saying, "Go, let's get out of here, hurry up, go!" and words to that effect. While he was putting the key in the ignition, the strange guy does this weird sort of karate move, like you might see on TV. He was spinning the machete around and doing kicks. Dave cranked up the car, and they took off out of there. Later that night, they rode back to the graveyard to see if he was still there. And of course, this time they had the doors locked and didn't get out of the car. They thought they saw someone lying in one of the graves towards the back of the graveyard, but it could have been a trick of the lighting. We don't know to this day who this individual was. I believe he was either on drugs or seriously mentally ill. It creeped all of them out that this very strange guy was probably hiding in the graveyard, watching them earlier, when they were walking around out there, laughing and having fun, totally oblivious to his presence. What's up, guys? Blue Spooky here, as always. I just wanted to thank you guys for watching, especially if you made it this far to the end here. If you guys liked the video, please feel free to leave a comment below, and possibly a like if you feel so inclined. If you have any particular stories you'd like me to read, or any personal stories you'd like to send in, all of the links to my social media will be in the description below. That includes my Gmail, Facebook, and Twitter accounts. If you do decide to send in a personal story, please feel free to include what the theme of that story is, if it has one, and how you'd like me to credit you in the video description. Also in this episode, I've raised the volume a tiny bit, for those of you who said that the volume was a little bit low before. So please go ahead and let me know if it's still too low, or if it's too loud now, or if it's just right, so that I can get a feeling of that. If you have any constructive criticism, please feel free to leave it in the comments below, as I'm always looking for new ways to improve the channel. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day.